Berserk Hawk of the Millennium Empire Arc, Chapter of the Holy Demon War, a long-winded but appropriate title, is a video game for the PlayStation 2, named after its source material, which, for the most part, it adapts very faithfully. Developed by UK's, the same dev team from Sword of the Berserk, it follows straight on from the ending of that game, adapting Volume 22 all the way through to Volume 28. It features the return of yet another amazing soundtrack from Susumu Hirasawa, and the last full-length soundtrack he's made for Berserk, other than the insert songs for the movies and the shows. As a PS2 game, the visual improvements are apparent right from the offset, but before even this, we're treated to an amazing introduction of events from the rest of the game. Best of all, this CG adaptation of the Eclipse. It looks amazing, to this day, and kind of puts the 2016-2017 show to shame. It is kind of hilarious that something as emotionally impactful as the Eclipse no doubt served to teach some newcomers that long-haired guy, bad guy, angry guy, good guy. The Berserker mode is back, and with the improved graphics, the overall system feels more like what it was originally meant to be. There are some deviations in the story that add some interesting elements and make the arc feel more like a video game, but these are sparse, mainly through the addition of some new mini-bosses and through the inclusion of a new apostle. Starting much like the arc, Guts and Zod fight on the Hill of Swords. Just like last time, this fight is pretty hardcore, especially for the start of a game, but it's a massive step up from the predecessor, and you can tell that this game utilized mocap instead of freehand character movements. The fight is a stalemate as Qliphoth and Zod go away and begin Qliphoth's new Band of the Hawk. That night, the Beast of Darkness clouds Guts' dreams and taunts him about killing Casca so that he can just carry on with his revenge plan against Qliphoth. At first, the dream appears to be due to an incubi, but the following night, Casca inadvertently creates an opening for demons to possess Guts and allow the beast to take control for real. Guts assaults Casca before breaking free of possession through sheer will, though the trust between the two is now broken. In a new scene, they come across a mansion and a portrait of a family, as they so often do, and Guts manages to catch a glimpse of something in the corner of his eye. He sees a taunting ghost named Charles, who blames him for the Band of the Hawk, and invites the presence of Judo, Pippin, and Caucus. Is he a ghost? Is he PTSD? We'll find out. Meanwhile, Serpico and Farnese run into Isidro. As this is just after the events of the Tower of Conviction, they each want to seek Guts for guidance in their own different ways. Guts agrees, if only for the Beast of Darkness' growing presence over him. They run into a mob of zombies, the women are captured by trolls, and the main crew is finally complete with the introduction of Shiake. At her master's house, Flora informs the group of evil forces making their way into the wildlife. They go to deal with it, with a local town struggling and needing their help from trolls, ogres, and other nasty creatures. Shiake deals great damage to them with her magic, whilst Guts slaughters the rest. They then venture forth into the caves of Qliphoth to dispose of the entity that opened the rift between worlds. In the cave, Guts is mentally singled out and approached once again by Charles, with the Band of the Hawk getting even more aggressive. He catches onto this illusion and discovers the creator, Charles, as an apostle that can give form to human thoughts. Years ago, his manor was raided, his parents killed, and his life ruined. He and his sister were left with nothing but a trinket, a Bahamut. He sacrificed his sister and began his life as an apostle. Charles keeps hiding and chooses to affect Guts in between his actions throughout Qliphoth. Whilst these moments are obviously filler and not canon, they ring a lot of truths to them, like the first game. Hearing what the band members have to say to Guts is really somber, but it's also fulfilling from an audience perspective. Maybe it's because this is something that Guts has experienced just prior to this point, which makes it more believable, but it just doesn't really come across as filler in any way. Guts overcomes these illusions by rebutting to Charles after deducing correctly that he sacrificed his sister. Charles is enraged and fights Guts in his true apostle form, which ends as you'd expect. This opens the door for Slan to materialize as the gates to Qliphoth begin shutting, leaving Guts to fight Slan in a boss fight once again before escaping with the help of Skull Knight. After regrouping with his newfound friends at Flora's mansion, they're intercepted by the Neo Band of the Hawk and have to fight for their lives, with Guts finding Skull Knight's old armor. Grunbeld storms the mansion, and Guts faces him as the final boss of the game. After defeating Grunbeld, that's it. It ends with Guts just collapsing and everyone laughing at him. It's hilarious because he's actually really hurt. I'd give the game a solid 7.5 out of 10. It's not bad. It did make me miss the original content of the Dreamcast game, and I wish there was a bit more original content in this, but because of the faithful adaptation of the game, it does kind of draw you more into the feeling of the manga than the Dreamcast game did. The ratio of gameplay to cutscenes is fairly similar to the first as well, with the cutscenes being much less of a puppeteer fest and more of a cinematic visual. So despite the whole thing being in untranslated Japanese, I actually quite enjoyed this as an adaptation. The infestation of astral creatures from Qliphoth serve as a great version of sub-bosses and wave-based enemies. Everything about gameplay and visuality from the first game is made better in this. Even for myself, who preferred the new Berserk content, I did get to enjoy something with this game because they actually insert a new character and a couple of scenes for different sections. It's a shame that this was the last piece of Berserk media to come out for just under a decade. I wish they'd have gotten Yuki's to carry on making Berserk games because with the growth that they had from the first game to this one, it would have been phenomenal to see where things went. In the first video, I went over how the first game was reminiscent of the progress that the Witcher series would make many years later. And this second installment, whilst no Witcher 2, really shows to me that Berserk probably was this close to getting that dream game that everyone wants, and how well the series would translate to something like that. But it simply wasn't meant to be. I may as well put the PlayStation 4 game here as well, just so I don't have to make another video on it down the line. It's a Dynasty Warriors game through and through, which is essentially like the combat version of Pachinko, where it's the exact same game, given a different coat of paint, for a different series, and just sold to its fans. Unfortunately, this isn't what the fan base really wants, so public opinion is a little bit sour for it. I think it's okay. It's a cool way to pass the time, but honestly, I think I get more fun out of the Dreamcast version, which automatically makes it the worst out of the three. And again, it's not bad, but it's just not much of anything. It breezes through the first 28 volumes and uses clips from the movies as cutscenes for the first half. The combat is fun for a couple of hours, and the character roster is cool, nothing special. It's a little bit too limited, and in the end, I just have to give it an alright 4 out of 10. With this game being in third place, I think, after now finishing the PS2 game, I'd have to place the Dreamcast game second place, with the PS2 version reigning supreme. I know it's hard to say go out there and play these games in 2020 simply based on the availability of these things. Shipping a Japanese PS2 over isn't exactly ideal, I get that. It sucks that this adaptation was never released outside Japan, translated officially, or even followed up in any way, because it's what a lot of people want more than anything from Berserk. Especially after the rise of Dark Souls, a series that takes many liberties from Berserk, thanks to its creator, Hidetaka Miyazaki. Maybe one day the dream team will happen, but all we've got is these 3 games. And that's something else I kind of want to finish off with. Between a Dynasty Warriors game and a life-size Zod statue, it really seems like the franchising of Berserk is kind of awful. After 2 genuine games, they stopped making anything for a decade. After this, in the early 2010s, they made the movies, which most people loved, but it didn't rake in that much cash. Then they made a cheap-looking anime that might have one of the worst reputations I've ever seen. Then they got the writer for that show to make a light novel, which you can see my video on to know more about that. Then Shueisha made a guidebook that we have literally no idea who the real author is. And now we have this publicly funded, life-size Zod statue. It's weird, especially for such a growing audience. I remember a couple of years ago, everyone used to think that Berserk was niche, and now look, there are many thriving channels dedicated solely to discussing Berserk content, and I myself wouldn't be here if not for that. All that's left to say is, thanks for sticking around for Berserk content, thanks for watching, and biggest of all, thanks to my patrons. If you've played all 3 Berserk games, comment down below which one's your favourite. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.